Okay, so hello everyone, welcome back to another episode of AI and Oats, which is my daily show where I answer questions and comment on news articles about AI, and normally it is so called because I eat a bowl of porridge, but today I have no porridge, just more energy drinks, but trying a new energy drink today, trying a Bloom energy drink for the first time, because I'm a big fan of Greg Lavecchier, or whatever his name is, his YouTube channel is pretty good, so it convinced me to try his drinks, so fair enough. Anyway, not that anyone cares. But firstly, well, just very quickly, who am I? Well, welcome, my name's Alistair. This is my YouTube channel where I teach Claude Code and Codex for knowledge work. That's very nice, actually. But I also run an AI consulting and training business called Ducks. And so if you'd be interested to see how we could work with your business, if you're a business owner or business executive, to help you build out an AI operating system or implement AI effectively, feel free to get in touch through the link in the description. And then I also have a school community where I go into even more detail about my actual Claude Code and Codex skills and systems and that sort of thing. But anyway, now that the preliminaries are out of the way, let's dive into the questions. During the day, I have a Codex automation that goes and sort of looks through forums and news sites about AI and collects what it thinks are interesting questions, puts them into this slide deck, and then I come home and answer them. So the first one, should a coding client import another client's rules by default? This is talking about agents.md and Claude.md. I mean, I'll maybe take it a little bit beyond coding, or just extrapolate it to kind of general like business use cases, or Claude Code for knowledge work, which is, I guess, more my domain. Should you import someone else's Claude.md or agents.md? What I would recommend is that you should make it quite custom. And in fact, what I do, and what I have done, is I've made a skill for people that can walk them through kind of an onboarding skill, part of which involves setting up their Claude.md through a kind of interview process about how they work and that sort of thing. I do think they're a fairly, like, you can kind of have a sort of templated Claude.md at least, or agents.md, that has fairly standard principles about, you know, effective ways of working and fixing problems and that sort of thing. You know, identifying the root cause of issues when addressing them rather than just sort of papering over them. So there are some things that I would suggest everyone probably puts in their agents.md or Claude.md, but I would still recommend that either one makes their own, or that, you know, if you're going to make it for someone as a service, you make it bespoke to them. So that would be my take on that. Not directly related to the coding context of the question, but just in general about agents.md and Claude.md. Right. How do you use GPT models within Claude Code? Right. I mentioned this in a couple of videos now, but yeah, you can. There is a Codex MCP that you can install in Claude Code. And so probably the easiest way to do it is just tell Claude Code you want to do that, but you might also be able to like just look it up. Yeah, so if you go to the GitHub repo, this is the one for Codex in Claude Code, and this is like the thing that has like an adversarial review that is like usually good to use if you're doing planning and you want to call in GPT or that sort of thing. And then here's the install instructions, but equally if you just copied this and gave it to Claude Code and said I want to install this Codex MCP or Codex plugin, it would do that for you. So if you just copy and paste that, or follow the install instructions, or just copy and paste the link and give it to Claude and say you want to install it, then you can call ChatGPT models within Claude Code through that plugin. And it has some of the, like as it was showing there, some kind of pre-made skills like the adversarial review. And so if you're in plan mode or something and you're doing a plan, often Claude Code will say, do you want me to call Codex to have a look at this plan? Which I would recommend if it's quite a big project. If it's just something small, then probably like Fable 5, Opus 5 are going to be intelligent enough generally, but it's still worth having a reviewer. One thing you might want to do, is probably not absolutely necessary, is you might want to consider putting either in the project level or probably the user level. I would suggest user level Claude.md, just somewhere. Either if you have a reference list of the plugins available and then you, as a separate markdown file, and then you tag that in the Claude.md, that's one way to do it. Or you might want to mention that, you know, as a principle for important builds, then Codex can be called in as a reviewer. The other thing that I would say works quite well as well, and potentially gives you even more scope, and just actually quickly, just I guess one thing to mention is like the way you set up the actual Claude Code thing. To have GPT models within Claude Code, you are still going to need an OpenAI account, basically, because you're going to use your OAuth and sign in that way. But anyway, yeah, so the other way to do it is if you just have a proper filing system set up, or what some people might call an AI operating system, then just working in the same folder, you can have Claude Code open and Codex open, each app. Then that almost gives you a little bit more flexibility, because you can just you can just do something in Claude Code, have the plan saved, then just switch over to Codex, and rather than having a skill that's quite tightly defined about what the adversarial review is, you could just say to Codex, just normally like you would, okay, I'm working we're working on this project, which we'll know already from, let's say, your tasks.md, and kind of by working in the same folder, and then you say review the plan Claude has just made, and then it will review it. If you really want to be extra certain that it's going to review the right one, then copy the file path and give it that. And so that's another way to do it that I think is pretty much equally as functional. And yeah, I guess you could argue it's a little bit trickier. It's a tiny bit more work to go from one app to the other, but quite frankly, if you just have them next to each other on two screens, like it's literally just a question of like switching screen, and then you're right there. So I don't think it's any harder than writing /Codex adversarial review in Claude Code, but that's my opinion. So yeah, personally I use Codex a lot to look at the work Claude does, and vice versa, but I don't actually use the Codex plugin. I don't actually use the Codex plugin tons and tons within Claude Code, although I do have it installed. Right, small business owner using ChatGPT, where should I start with AI agents? Right, I would say definitely don't. Agents are these things that kind of get overcomplicated. I would say you don't need to create a whole army of agents. What you want, as I've kind of mentioned before, is fundamentally also agents is a kind of marketing term, nebulous term, because quite a lot of AI usage now is agentic. If agents are just able to pursue goals and use tools and reflect on what they're doing and break it down into individual tasks. But I would say, well, if you're looking specifically at the ChatGPT ecosystem, don't overcomplicate it. Just download Codex, get the $20 a month plan or something at first. You'll probably want to upgrade later because it's good value for money, but get Codex, point it at the files where you work already. What I would do is spend some initial time just having it kind of discuss your goals with you, how you work, that sort of thing. Create an agents.md, have it audit your filing system, how you filed stuff already, so that it understands where everything is stored and where the important stuff is. If you have stuff in a Google Drive, that sort of thing, connected to all your connectors, have it do an interview with you. And this is the kind of thing that, if I were working with a client, I would make this as an onboarding skill that I would then give to them, that would run them through the whole interview process of auditing their folder structure, helping them work out what connectors they need, helping them write their agents.md, helping them set up their first skills, that sort of thing. But that would be what I'd say is just get kind of the make sure it understands your folder structure, make sure it has an agents.md, make sure it has a context folder understanding all about you and your business, in this case, what you do, who's your ICP, what you sell, what are your offers. Make sure that the agents.md points at that context folder or references it somehow so that it understands and is making informed decisions connected to the things you want to connect, and then just tell it, I guess, converse with it, explain that you're relatively new, try to explain what your biggest challenges are that you want to solve, and it will help you, whether that's and then I'd say good places to start would be something like maybe auditing your website, helping you redesign a website, because that's a cool thing to do with AI agents that feels very exciting to be able to make a new website. Maybe it's gonna get it to use computer use. Let's say you kind of computer use to audit your current website and click through the funnel and see how easy is it for a prospective customer to get to the point of purchase, depending on what you're selling. That's the kind of thing it can do because of its ability to use a browser and use a computer. Then I'd say move on to, if you have SOPs within your business, those are perfect to turn into skills, because what a skill is essentially an SOP but for an AI agent. So start making some skills for repeated workflows you do. and then eventually start automating stuff and that sort of thing. So that's where I would start, using in the ChatGPT ecosystem with Codex specifically. Although technically it's all just one app now. It's not even, I mean, it's still called Codex, but you wouldn't even need to download anything separate. Just use the ChatGPT desktop app. I wouldn't suggest you need to start off using like loads of Hermes agents or anything like that. I say that, quite frankly, I think for most people you only really need Codex or Claude Code. I think both of them is a very like kind of good combo. Both of them plus Hermes agent is useful. To have some sort of like always on, I don't know, cloud agent, if you want to call Hermes that, if you have it on a VPS or something. But I don't think it's necessary. I mean, I find that although I have a Hermes agent set up, I still do the vast majority of my work in Claude Code and Codex. I think that they're the most effective from my perspective. So I don't think you need to overcomplicate it and start setting up loads and loads of different agents, because you'll just get confused and overwhelmed and probably stop using them. I think just get, a really high-powered, very useful agent in the form of Codex, and get it understanding your business and understanding the work you do and seeing how it can help there. That's what I would say. I'd say just start playing around with Codex if you want to look at the ChatGPT ecosystem specifically. The exact same concept applies to Claude Code if you're in the Anthropic ecosystem, and quite frankly my recommendation would be being in both ecosystems, because that way, if one of them starts ramping up prices or something, you can always just switch out to the other one, and as long as you've got your folder structure and everything done correctly, there should be minimal kind of difficulties in switching out the actual model you're using. Claude Code, AI slop, and the death of art. Codex hasn't done a particularly good job of informing me of the rest of this question here. I mean, it's pretty general. Yes, I do think that obviously AI makes it far easier to produce far more stuff at a faster rate and at a lower quality. I don't think the things, which obviously means that AI slop is possible and likely and evident in many places. I don't think that Claude Code and the ability for people to do things more easily and faster absolutely necessitates AI slop, in the sense that I think people who use Claude Code or Codex effectively end up with stuff much better than AI slop, and perhaps better than what they would have done initially. I mean, when it comes to art specifically, I think that's a bit of a different question. It depends what type of art you're talking about. Are you talking about literal artwork like painting, or art as in, I don't know, theatre? And I don't think AI inherently causes creative work like art to deteriorate in quality depending on how you use it. I mean, if you use AI as a kind of thinking and sparring partner and a reviewer and a critical reviewer, and it can take on different personas or personae, let's say you're a playwright or something, then perhaps, I mean, I'm not a playwright so I can't necessarily comment, but perhaps having that ability to kind of create artificial different perspectives before publishing something could be an enhancer. But yeah, I mean, I think, AI is, I guess, what would you say, is kind of I guess it sort of exaggerates whatever you currently do. If you're currently very devoted to the creative work of whatever art form you choose, then I think AI can enhance that devotion and creativity. If you're just looking to pump out as much low quality stuff as you can as quickly as possible, and you don't really care about anything, then I guess that does create some AI slop. Who knows, maybe people think my YouTube videos are AI slop because I use AI to produce some of the slide decks and stuff for them. I don't really mind, but I guess it's a matter of taste and judgment. So AI slop, yeah, I guess it will exist, it's inevitable, but I don't think that everything that's produced by AI or with the aid of AI is AI slop. Is Claude good for this? So, and this being specifically running a large eBay shop and wanting to automate the listing process. Yes, I would imagine it is. I mean, I have relatively little experience running an eBay shop. Well, no experience running an eBay shop for myself. However, the idea of automating some sort of listing process sounds exactly like the sort of thing Claude Code could do. I mean, using computer use, you could also connect it. I don't know, it depends what you're like listing, but if it involves showing images of the product or something, you could have Claude Code connect to something like Higgsfield or OpenArt, some kind of MCP that's going to give you image generation opportunities, and therefore, you know, if you have reference images of the product, but let's say the background doesn't look as good, you can kind of, Claude Code can connect to those MCPs and put them in what looks like a professional photo shoot, that sort of thing. You can definitely set up a routine that will, I don't know, run every day, every week, whatever. Look at the upload the items, or you could have Claude Code write the kind of copy. I mean, I have relatively little experience, as I say, running any sort of like eBay e-commerce shop, but just off the top of my head, you could set up a kind of loop that's essentially each week going to review the performance. Maybe it will change the way it writes the sales copy, if there is sales copy, let's just assume there is, slightly, or it changes the way it generates the image. Let's just run with this example that you do have an image in this scenario. Then based on that, each week it can then reflect on the metrics of, I don't know, sales, whether they increased or decreased based on those slight changes, and then write that to its kind of like learnings markdown file for this loop. And then the following week it will reflect on that and hopefully do an improved image or improved sales copy, and it will keep doing that and iterating. And so that's the kind of loop that I would recommend setting up if you're looking to automate a listing process for eBay using Claude Code. Yes, I think it would be well suited to that. Good resources on how to optimally prompt Claude Code. Right, well, without being pedantic, I'm not a huge fan of the split infinitive there, so I'll say to prompt Claude Code optimally. I would say probably the best place to go is Anthropic. Anthropic themselves, on, I believe it's the Claude Code docs, definitely have stuff about how to prompt their models, because it does change kind of model to model, or like model family to model family, or model generation, if you want to call it that. So I know that Fable 5 and Opus 5, you probably want to prompt them less because they're more intelligent. You don't really want to over prompt them. You kind of want to prompt them point them at their goal, and then I guess there's a thing called reverse prompting where you say, like, based on this goal, what should I do? And it's more questioning rather than directing. And so I feel like you don't want to over direct the most recent models, but the advice changes kind of model to model. I guess a little bit of it is trial and error, but I do believe that there is some guidance on it from Anthropic themselves. So I mean, just coming to the like Claude platform docs, they have prompting Claude Fable 5. Oh yeah, like with Fable 5, I know for a fact, like you can say stuff like the user will not be here, so just run autonomously and don't ask any questions, because it can do very long horizon stuff. I've definitely done that before when I just wanted to do stuff like overnight or when I'm going to be out of the house but I still want it running. Yeah, here we are. You are running autonomously, you're operating autonomously, the user is not here, that sort of thing. And yeah, so there's different kind of nuances for each model. Like they're saying here that Fable 5 often thinks it's going to run out of context, or not often, sometimes thinks it's going to run out of context, and you can tell it that it's not going to. Okay, so this is another thing, give it a reason for that sort of thing. So yeah, this is like a gold mine, really, I think. Sad as it might sound, I do quite enjoy just reading through these documentation pages in the evening sometimes. I haven't read the Opus 5 one in loads of detail yet, but I remember reading the Fable 5 one. Anything interesting here? Okay, telling it how to use sub-agents. Interesting, because exactly this is the thing, each model has its own kind of quirks and that sort of thing. Because of the way they develop models, it's not, people don't really like, when they're training the models, my understanding is it's a bit more like growing and a kind of an organism almost. They don't really, it's not like hard coded. They can't necessarily predict how it's going to like function, how it's going to act. And so it turns out that Opus 5 seems to have a predisposition to delegating to sub-agents, so therefore it's worth saying this sort of thing. So yeah, this is what I would say is the best place to learn how to prompt the models, because there's less of a kind of onus on prompt engineering than I think there once was. The models are better. You can just communicate with them fairly loosely and kind of naturally, and they will get much further than they would have done in the past. They're quite good at inferring, especially with, you know, a good harness set up like Claude Code or Codex. However, there are still quirks of the models, and there are times you want to tell it to use a specific, you know, do things a specific way. Like you might want to tell it to use sub-agents for something, or you might want to tell it like to run autonomously, or you might want to use the terms like to loop over, that sort of thing. So there's still merit to having a kind of understanding of the vocabulary and the useful terms and styles of prompting the models. So I don't think prompt engineering is an entirely lost art. I think it's nowhere near the level of complexity it used to be. And now maybe you would consider it sort of subsumed into whatever you want to call it: harness engineering, loop engineering, graph engineering, one of these other engineering buzzwords we have. But I would still say that those resources from Anthropic are particularly useful. And I don't know if OpenAI offers something similar, but I think that like 5.6, I feel, acts in a kind of similar way to Fable 5 and Opus 5 in terms of its ability to run for a long time autonomously and that sort of thing. So I've found that applying the same sorts of principles I use with prompting Fable 5 to 5.6, GPT 5.6, seem to work. But yeah, I'd say just go straight to the source of like Anthropic or OpenAI, look at their documentation, and it's usually got good advice. How much Codex usage do the extra $20 give you compared with the free plus weekly allowance? I don't know, to be honest. I would imagine like extra usage, I think within Claude Code certainly extra usage is done at like API pricing, so it's obviously going to be used up much faster than your whatever, like in the sense that your plan is heavily subsidized. I think certainly within Claude Code, I assume it's similar kind of numbers for Codex, but a $200 a month plan gets you about $8,000 to $10,000 worth of tokens or credits. But once you're into extra usage, I'm pretty sure that's then on API pricing. So I would imagine that $20 extra does not get you tons compared to the actual, like if you just upgraded to the next tier of the plan. Right, so I think that will wrap it up for today. Hopefully there was some interesting stuff in there for you. If you did enjoy, please feel free to subscribe. And yeah, just to mention it again, if you'd like to work with me one-on-one to help you build out an AI operating system, or help you find how AI can be implemented effectively in your business to grow your revenues and grow your business in general, then feel free to get in touch through the link in the description. And equally, if you're interested in our school community, the link for that will be in the description too. But that will be it for today. Thank you very much for watching, everyone, and I will see you tomorrow. Goodbye.